Welcome back to Love is Crimes, Love is Blind recap show where we talk all things Love is Blind. David Dennis Jr., we made it! The finale! Before we dive in, this was a much more interesting episode than I thought it would be. How did you feel?
Mina Kimes, I'm not above you. I'm not below you. I'm right here with you.
Still rocking with me?
Still rocking with you. Rocking with your boy. Thanks for rocking with me this whole time. Oh,
Oh, man.
this was, dare I say, one of the most perfect episodes of reality TV I've ever seen. Like, it's not. I mean, obviously, we're on a different scale. We're not like on a Breaking Bad, Succession television scale here, but there is like a scale of like how great a reality show can be. And this gave us everything. It gave us the ridiculous. It gave us like hilarity, and it gave us like really, really something very, very tangible and very deep to talk about. Like, we're gonna make a lot of jokes about this episode as usual, but I feel like we're gonna end up having a very like,
Yeah.
a very deep conversation about what we saw, I've been looking forward to this for a long time to talk about this very particular episode.
This was there was the reality TV and then
Mm,
there was the real in
yeah,
this episode. Like there was a heavy maybe more so than actually any Love is Blind finale. The
yeah,
real really like, and by the real I mean family, like
mm,
history, like parents, all of just I said family and parents. That's redundant,
yeah,
but you get the point. It's heavy. It got
yeah.
heavy. Before we get into that, I'm alluding unsurprisingly, not to Johnny and Amy, but to
Yeah.
Adie and Clay. There was a breakup before things really got kicking with the
Mm,
weddings. So that where we left off last week, it was Jimmy and Chelsea's date at Carowinds,
uh-huh.
apparently a local amusement park.
Oh,
Uh,
Carowin. Hold up now. Let's not
sorry,
downplay
this
what
is
we got
your
at Carowinds.
Vermont. Yeah, I
All
don't want
right,
to. Yeah,
Carowinds right there off of exit 1 when you get into North Carolina. This is like Six Flags is for Georgia's. Carowinds, Halloween time, they turn into Scarowinds, which is like one of the best renamings of a theme park I could imagine. This is an institution in North Carolina right there with Cookout and NASCAR and Ric Flair. This is a very North Carolina thing.
Can I say, going on a date at empty amusement park is like an all-time date fantasy for me. It's kinda
Uh-huh.
like when I was a kid, it was doing the Toys R Us Toys Run in the empty
Yeah.
toy store.
Uh,
This is the adult version of that, like, Jimmy and Chelsea hit the jackpot with this date
yeah.
with getting I don't know if they chose it or who they got assigned to it, but what a privilege that they had. And at one point, when they break up, Chelsea's like, "Did you just want to go to Carol?"
Fair, fair, fair. Because
But it's actually an important point, and this is
Mhm,
I've been dying to get your take on this because at the end of last week, Jimmy's kind of like they're having what seems to be like it seems like they have a great day.
mhm,
They coming off the ice sculpture
yeah,
date. All of a sudden, Jimmy has forgiven her for no small number of inexplicable fights and nagging. They're getting closer and closer to the weddings.
mhm,
They're on the final date. They're having a blast. He asks her like it's so odd to me because he sets it up like he's still like he like loves her and stuff, and then
yeah,
he asks her, "Are you in?" That's the cliffhanger. I'm like, why is that the cliffhanger? This one's
yeah.
obviously in. Come back. She's like, yeah. And then he's like, yeah, nah. Nah.
You're my person. The best thing I've ever done was pick you. I love you so much, but nope. Weird. What's going
Weird.
on?
Let's I want to unpack. So he brings up, I wrote down some stuff that he
Uh,
said. First, he said he doesn't want a relationship with her. He doesn't want to go to the altar. So
okay.
I do think that matters because
Yeah.
that suggests it's not all like a fraud,
Right.
and this is a constant tension on the show, which is like getting married, but not, and we'll get to that. Obviously
Yeah.
becomes very significant later. He brings up that she said Amy and Johnny were the strongest couple, which remains like a stupid thing to be
Yeah.
mad about.
Yeah.
And then he brings up the fight they had about her
Days
crossing
ago.
the boundary days ago.
Days ago. He's like, you
Days
said this
ago.
about them days ago.
And then he says he can't fathom marrying her
Yeah.
after that fight. And then they get into it. She it gets very is very upset, kind of
Mm.
fairly upset in this
Yeah.
case for
Yeah.
once. She does tell another one of her many lies, by the way, or at least maybe that's unfair, but she says, "You said that I was the one who always wanna have sex, so I rolled the tape." That's not what he
Yeah.
said. He
Not
was
what he
being
said.
very not what he said. It was just about that one instance. He said, "I need a
Mhm.
breather." And then they break up, and that's it. And it's the cannon fires into the sky, and we never hear from them again.
Yeah.
So I want you to explain to me what exactly you think happened with Jimmy here, because, like I said, it's the setup, the lead up. He was all in,
Yeah.
and then he was out.
So what's interesting about this with the backdrop to me is the rumor that has always been around, unconfirmed, confirmed, is that if you're doing Love is Blind and you get to a certain level of the show, a certain stage, you have to go to the altar, right? That's sort of been
Like
what
you're legally bound.
yeah, like you have to like there's cast members who sort of said this, there's producers who said this on Reddit, it's been this idea. So it feels like that's playing a part like Jimmy's up against some sort of deadline or something of like I got to do this before before I get to that debt. But it feels like they were already so close. Like it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like I don't know. Like that's the only thing that makes sense to me because it does not make sense to me to wait days after that fight, days after she makes that comment. You do the ice thing. You go to Carowinds. You know, you have this this magical time at one of the most magical places in the United States of America, and then you say, like, no, it does not make any sense because there was no new information. Like, there was
Yeah,
nothing that
no, that
happened
yeah,
new that made him finally say
that
this.
we
He
know
just
of.
sort of was like, yeah, that we know of, right? And as we know, the camera crew was on some sort of load management because they missed all the actual stuff that happened during the show. So who knows what could have happened? But nothing that we've seen indicates that anything changed. And he just kind of like put the kibosh on it.
I can't help but wonder if there was an an offstage intervention, the likes of
Yeah.
which we suspect happened with Kenneth, although there's some new information on that front, which I'm
Mm.
sure we'll get to in the reunion. I guess I'll just say the information that it has been revealed that him and Brittany had to reenact their breakup for the cameras, which explains a lot.
Right, right.
But anyways, my point is with Jimmy, I think they had the big fight. That was his out.
Mhm.
And no one would have blamed him, and
Right,
then
yeah.
he stuck with it, and I can't help but wonder if he had a conversation with a friend, maybe one
Mhm.
of the lady friends,
Yeah,
and, I don't know if you've ever staged an intervention with someone, but, you gotta kinda, like, be straight up with them, and I wonder
yeah,
if someone sat down and was like, "Yo, this is not a healthy relationship. Your partner sucks. She's making unreasonable demands and crossing boundaries." And then I do wonder if he went into this date and maybe he's like a non-confrontational passive person and he
yeah.
just couldn't figure out how to end it, thinking that this would be it. And
Yeah,
then finally he was like, all right, at the end, and then his way of asking her if she was in was his very awkward way of backing into telling her
yeah.
he was out.
Yeah, which I guess he might have expected her to say something that she usually says. It's like, "I don't know if you really love me," because to be fair, like, she said a lot of the same things that are, like, really, trash and kind of gaslighty and weird to say. Like, "I feel like you never loved me. You didn't want me this whole time." And the kicker, which, I've been down this road before, is, "There are some things that I don't like about you that I don't tell you about." And he's like, "Word? Like what?" And she's like, nothing actually. Like those are all bad signs.
Yeah.
And these are like the same Chelsea that we always got the whole time. It was just weird that he waited a few days to do it. And he probably should have just said, "Hey, before we walk into the roller coaster in this magical place called Carowinds, I'm gonna cut this off before we do it the date."
It would have been if he was a real one, he would have let the producers film him riding the rides after. Jeremy would have done it. Jeremy would
Right,
have for sure.
right. Just him and Jeremy on a roller coaster together, just having the time of their lives.
Or Jess shows
Just
up in
right.
amusement park with her kids. Yeah, I think your theory is right. Producer Charlie echoes. He probably was just a tiny part of him was hoping she would either straight up dub him or at least give him another kind of scaffolding for an
Right.
exit. He's straight. I mean, that is. I think it was Jess who accused him of being a guy who kind of wants to take the easy way out, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's definitely not a pusher. And yeah, it's. I mean, I was relieved
yeah,
because they were so clearly not supposed to be married. I was puzzled though, just because of the way it all unfolded. So
yeah.
I think there's going to be more. I think based on what we're seeing from their online activity, they're going to be very we'll get to actually so instead of, uh, "Are they gonna get married?"
Mm.
I am introducing an alternate segment, which is, "Are they still together?" So, well,
Okay, alright.
let's put a pin in this couple
Okay,
because
alright.
he did suggest he wanted to stop relationship.
Yeah.
All right, so the two remaining couples, it is down to the final four, although this is a very lopsided bracket. Uh, we got AD and Clay, and then of course we have Johnny and Amy, whose names I said second because my brain was trying to remember who they were.
Right.
I started that sentence not knowing how to land the
Didn't know
plane.
where it was gonna end,
I
right.
was like, and of course we have Johnny and Jamie and Johnny. They have bachelor and bachelor parties. Nothing really interesting happens other than AD drunkenly saying over and over that she believes Amy and Johnny are having sex because you
Did
cannot buy the car.
don't buy the car unless you test drive it. She came off as really adorable. Like, it
So
actually
cute,
made
yeah.
it kinda worse. It was like, I kinda like AD. She seems like fun to hang around, like, she was
The four
like
of them all seem
yeah,
fun in these
yeah,
scenes. Actually, I don't know if you have blah, 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 but like Clay and his friends and Johnny, they all
yeah,
seem to like each other too. Like these
yeah,
final four,
yeah,
like
yeah,
they're all. It definitely based on setting aside the relationships, the social dynamic of the show. These seem to be the four most liked people
yeah, yeah.
of the crew. Nothing else really from the bachelorette
Nothing,
party.
yeah,
It looked fun
yeah,
too. They find
yeah.
really good locations for these parties and stuff. Let's do AD and Clay. Let's just do it. Should
Alright,
we do
let's
it?
get
Should
to
we
it.
do that first, or should we? I mean, Amy and Johnny. I mean, we can spend like 5
Let's
minutes. I
get
do
let's
have
let's
a.
yeah, let's get Johnny and Amy out the
Let's
way. Let's get them out the
okay.
way. Let's get 'em out the way because who knows how long we could do 3 hours on AD and Clay. So let's let's get these 2 lovable, boring people out of the way.
Okay. The notes I have from this, I have about 300 words of notes on the other couple, and then like 30 words on them. I wrote
The yawn stretch as we're beginning to get to them is very telling.
I was touched by Amy's brother showing up because
Yeah,
she's talked
yeah,
about him being
mm,
protective of him. It was obviously such a big deal to have him walk with her down the
yeah,
aisle. Look, she's a lovely person. Her family's
yeah.
lovely. I want to be
Everybody's so
clear.
yeah, great
Everyone's
people,
lovely.
lovely gowns,
Um,
just fantastic people.
I did think it was interesting that Johnny's mom was like tatted up. I don't know if you noticed that,
Yeah.
but
That just goes to show how poisoned we are by reality TV, that they're like just this incredible Disney story of like love just interests nobody. It's just
I
like
was about to say it's actually goes to show too. I mean, this show was quite an advertisement for sins of the fathers
yeah, yeah.
versus having healthy role model because like
Yeah.
both of these people are clearly like really good relationships with their
Mm,
parents. They're like modeling good behavior.
yeah.
There's no and I I'm not making any broader statements about that, but just within these four couples or two couples, four people, it was a pretty stark contrast from a
Yeah.
family dynamic.
And it was I actually found myself like very like welcoming their wedding because it was such a palate cleanse from like the like
Yeah.
how chaotic the middle hour of the episode was, and we get this like 20 minutes that's just like like it was a deep breath. And I'm glad that they I will say that at the beginning of this I was like, I think they're gonna make it because they feel like the only couple that makes it, like that was why they're even included in the show. And they're just
Mm.
like they had a utility of being like, yeah, okay. Like, give me 20 minutes to, like, decompress from, like, what I just witnessed with AD and Clay.
It's you called it from the beginning. Why you called them a cut couple because there are couples that get married to make the show, and I think your theory was borne out. And yeah, after the AD Clay train wreck, I was like, "Oh, okay, we know they're getting married, at
Yeah,
least."
yeah.
There was one thing that I thought was notable that I did want to mention to you, which is at the very end when they're doing their happy couple interview, Johnny says, "Yeah, like if I'd seen her at, they talk about the like, is love really blind?"
Yeah.
And at the end, he's like, this is like we're a success story for that
Mm,
concept. He says, I would have been intimidated by her if we were at a bar. And
mm,
he's like,
mhm.
well, it worked out for me.
Right.
And I do think it does seem like I was thinking back of the history of the couples that have succeeded on this show.
Uh-huh.
If the woman is better looking than the man by
Mhm.
conventional standards, it does seem a little bit more likely to work out.
Yeah.
I know that I'm drawing with a very broad brush
Uh,
here and leaning on stereotypes, but it just feels like this was kind of like one of those stories.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm trying
Except
to
for
be
like
delicate here.
the unicorns of Brett, and that relationship from like they just were
Yeah.
like on the same level in
Same level.
every
Yeah.
way, and they just match. But yeah, I think generally if the guy is just head over heels and just can't get over how lucky he is, that's a good
Yeah.
start. I
That's what I
think the
mean. Yeah.
the little dance they do at the end, he's like, "Oh, my wife is so hot," and she's like doing the little like corny little dance. It was like pretty adorable. It was
They're dorks
yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
They're a good match. I was really happy for them. Okay. Clay and AD.
All right.
So, wedding day, I took extensive notes here. They show the recap, which we were reminded of how Clay proposed.
Mm.
Rock out with your boy. It's foreshadowing of
We
something
don't
to
we
come.
which we never did, which I feel like was going rock out with your boy Clay versus meet me at the altar in your white dress as worse proposals from this season, because
Yeah.
meet me at the altar in your white dress, the lyrics are followed by we ain't getting no younger. We might as well do it. Those are the lyrics of the song. So I feel like these may be the two worst proposals that you could possibly get, and they were foreboding for what we saw.
So, AD's mom shows up in a very jaunty fedora.
Hmm.
She meets Clay's mom.
Hmm.
They're great. You
Yeah,
know, they seem they reference actually that they hung out separate. Great, all
yeah.
great. Clay has an emo sister, which I loved. I don't know if you noticed
Yes,
that. I was
yes.
like,
Very
okay,
earthy Erica Badu
yeah.
sister.
His
Uh,
family's really, really
yeah,
fascinating. Piercings.
yeah.
And then Mr. Grabasande shows up, and Clay is surprised. I don't think he knew if he was
Yeah.
going to come for sure. It's kind of unclear. It's very obvious they do not have a close relationship and don't
Hmm.
see a lot of each other. Um, so immediately the dad starts talking to him,
Hmm.
and he
Whose
starts
name is apparently Tever.
Trevor.
The internet told me
Trevor
his name is Tever, Trevor, or Trevor
Trevor with
without an
no
R.
R.
That's what the internet
Uh,
has informed me. So,
well, in my mind, he's Suave
uh,
Gravasande.
all right.
So he sort of, I should have written down more of this. He kind of gives him a speech about, it starts off kind of like he's being complimentary of Clay
uh,
because he talks about what a good athlete he was, but then it becomes about himself and how he was an amazing runner and he almost made the Olympics. And
yeah, and the best part is Clay in the middle of the story is like, yes, yes, you told me once before. And the dad just keeps going.
okay.
He's like, almost could have been in the Olympics, pull my hamstring, world class athlete. Just making sure everybody knows that when I walk into the room.
He talks about the advice his own mom gave him
Mm.
about being taking care of your kids, and he says he
Yeah.
was good with it and being good to your wife, and then he's like, "Yeah, and I did a great job taking care of you guys," and he leaves out any mention of his marriage. This
Uh,
is intercut with edits of Clay talking to the camera,
mm,
and what I found really fascinating was the contrast between the way Clay was around his dad, which was
mm,
very kind, letting
mm.
him talk just nonsense, and then to the camera being very straightforward and being like, "Yeah, my dad me up."
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
basically, yeah, it's becoming increasingly clear that a lot of my issues I probably inherited from watching my dad,
yeah.
like just this and so David, as this was happening, I guess my question for you is, did you start to get worried about where this was going with Clay while this scene was unfolding?
Okay, so I'm preface this by saying there's no fewer than 1,500 words I wrote about this that are being published, like that are going on Anscape like today. So this is incredible. As somebody who literally wrote a book about like daddy issues and like dad son things, like this was like fascinating to play out for me. Clay looked so like like a child when his dad showed up.
Yeah.
Like he just kind of was like giddy and like very happy and like meek, and like was shrinking himself so his dad could take that, take the spotlight and tell his sports story. And the dad also gives about 45 seconds of nonsense advice that said nothing. He was like, if you think high, you think low. If you look to the sky, you look right. if you think wrong, you think long. If you know what I'm saying?
Like
Like,
Dr. Seuss,
yeah, it was like
one
Russell. It
fish,
was like,
two fish, three
you're
fish,
right.
yeah.
It's like Russell Wilson, like post game presser meets like Kanye West monologue. I don't know what was going on. And he was like, if you frown, you look down. The best man wins. I always say, you know, you know, fourth quarter is the best quarter. That's what you got to do. You look to your right, look to the man on the left, and you got to see we're out there on the battlefield together. Because if you look loose, you're gonna cook your goose. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is not even marriage advice. What are the words that are like? And Clay's just like, yeah, Dad, thanks. This is the best. You know, like this is probably one of the most substantial conversations they've had, and it was like a bunch of
Yeah,
nonsense. It was nothing. There was nothing formative there. I didn't have any doubts. Like at that point, I didn't feel like Clay was wavering. On second watch, obviously, if you see what happened, you kind of see that there's like
yeah,
some stuff there. But on the first watch, I was just like, oh well, he's just like he wants to impress his dad. Like this is going to be a moment that his dad's going to be proud of him. He's getting
yeah.
married. He's got this like beautiful woman going to walk down the aisle. He's going to show his dad how fine she is and all that stuff. And they're going to have this bonding moment. I didn't think he was flipping on him at all. I didn't see any wavering.
My heart broke watching their
Mm,
interaction a little bit.
yeah.
Same as you, he just seems so young,
Mm,
and it's one thing to hear a guy talk about his dad and how he was kinda crappy to the
yeah.
mom and maybe not a great role model and maybe not, like, the best, not someone you could, like, look up to. It's another to, like, actually see that, like,
Yeah.
really play out very obviously, and it was hard to watch. It was really
Yeah.
hard to watch, and most of the parents on this show are great. I think
Yeah.
about, like, God, I know I keep going back to them, but you remember Brett's dad?
Yeah.
Of course, again, I know
Yeah.
I don't wanna like, but your parents aren't your destiny. They
Right.
really
Yeah.
aren't.
Yeah.
But boy, there are a lot of examples on this show where you see how much it helps when you've
Yeah.
got great parents, and they don't have to be together, but just, like, caring parents, parents who allow you to be emotionally vulnerable,
Mhm.
and that's just not the case here, and you see a young I mean, what is he, like? He's 30, I think, 29, 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a guy who's still in the process of overcoming that and acknowledges so, and frankly, let's be real, has acknowledged that, has never once lied about that
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
But
a lot
yeah,
further along than a lot of people are when they have these sort of like parent father figure issues. Is that Clay has like like as you mentioned in those cuts in between, he's like, this has been the thing that has carried with me this entire time, and that I am bringing to the altar today. Like in an hour, I am bringing this conversation and all these years I've had with this man with me into this marriage, into this like stage of the altar. So that is like progress. Like that is a good thing. Like a lot of people have those issues. Like, yeah, my dad is cool. Like he's suave. He got all the women. Da da da. Like I want to be like him without understanding all that other stuff. So Clay, like I'm happy that he's at least at that stage of acknowledging it.
well, so that brings us to the altar,
Mm,
and I really want to. Okay, so they show up. At this point, I'm with you. I'm thinking this is get yes, I
mm.
do. They give their speeches. Speeches are not great. His speech is mostly about how she puts up with him, which is
Yeah,
never a good
yeah.
sign, never a
About
good
how
sign.
she like it's a very like repeated thing that happens, especially, like you see a lot of like black women especially mention this stuff is like these men will like talk about you at your funeral, talk about you at the wedding and all that stuff about like, oh, she puts up with me, she holds me up, she like checks me on my stuff, she carries this weight, she carries this burden, she does this, and like no mention of like, is she funny? Like, what's
Her
her favorite
qualities,
food? What's
yeah,
her, like, what is like, and what do I do for her? It's just like she just lifts this burden for me, and like, thanks, I guess.
and I will say, she also, in her speech, talks about being his caretaker, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just like I'm watching this, and I still think they're gonna say yes, but I'm like, I don't love this dynamic. I don't love it for either of them,
yeah, yeah.
and then she says yes.
Uh-huh.
He says, "I'm still rocking with you."
Oh.
Which in some ways perfect
Mm,
because I keep going back to this with Clay because I'll be curious to see how the internet reacts to
mm,
him. By the way, I don't know if I don't think he's going to be as villainized as like
yeah.
some villains because I do think people will see because of the way this was portrayed and there's a lot of complexity to it.
Mm,
But in his defense, and I think again, him using that same language for the proposal, he has always represented himself accurately to
Yeah.
her, and she has always recognized her own
Yeah.
behaviors when it comes to, like, accepting that caretaker role and broken men, so to speak.
Yeah.
So he basically, to paraphrase, says, he's not ready to get married at this point, still, but of course, we'll still be together because he's still
Yeah.
rocking with her. He knows she will fight for him, which I was like,
Yeah.
oh, bro, like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And AD goes,
Yeah.
she's shocked.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
is shocked. So let's take a breather here. Tell me in person, just give me your reaction to this moment.
Okay, obviously a few things. So first, this was the first time that this premise of the show felt cruel. Like this was the first time. Like I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times people come to the altar, and I get the impression that like when the cameras aren't rolling, they're like with their bridesmaids, their groom, like I ain't marrying this fool. You know what I'm saying? Like this
Yeah,
ain't
like,
like
yeah.
we're gonna go through this thing, but look, I'm telling you, this ain't happening, right? And this one was the one that felt like AD talked about the first of seven siblings to get married, and the mom has yes, she was dressed like Carmen San Diego or Spy versus Spy, but she was like very like into like this whole idea. Like this felt like an actual wedding, like this felt like the real deal, and that she actually was blindsided and had her heart broken. Like the whole family seemed like upset and broken by this moment. Initially I was angry at Clay. Like my first notion was to be extremely angry with Clay and to
Yeah.
be like, you will never in your life like touch the hem of a garment of a woman like AD ever again. And you just like rejected her. And I was so upset at him. And then that sort of, after I watched, I kind of like, changed a little bit about how I felt about it. I actually, considering all the things you said and the other things we saw about the way that he talked about it, like this to me was the first and most like apparent act of selflessness and love that Clay has ever shown AD.
Hmm.
And whether he did that in a moment of panic or freaking out or whatever, it was an act of love to her because that man was not everything you said at the altar was absolutely true. That man was not
Yeah.
ready to be married to her. He was not going to be a good husband to her. He was going to take and take and take and drain and drain and drain. And she was going to build him up, lift him up, deal with his BS and all of the, issues that he had, and it was not going to work out. Even when we talk about it, we don't say we weren't putting up yes because they're in love. We putting up yes because we were like AD is lost in this mess.
Yeah.
He was not ready to marry her, and he would have benefited from that marriage. She would have taken care of him. His life would have been good. He would have got everything he needed from her, and she would have gotten none of it. And at that moment, he decided to forego that life and spare AD. Like he spared her a whole lot of heartache and pain. And whether it was intentional, whether that was what he was thinking of at the time, it was an act of love and selflessness to free her from that.
Follow-up question. Do you think he went into that day knowing that that's the direction he was gonna go in? Or do you think his conversation with his dad, seeing his dad, processing the way his
Mm.
dad's impacted him, affected his decision at all?
So he's kept saying it's a game time decision, which again, phrasing like let's not let's not talk about this as if we're talking about a calf strain here, please. Like that was not good, but I think he made the decision at the altar. Like the way he was talking about her ahead of time, the way I feel like he made that decision spur of the moment, the way his family looked shocked. I think there was some sort of like something subconscious, something internal, some panic
Yeah.
that happened that he was like, I'm not ready for this. And the weird thing is that afterwards he talked about like the financials weren't adding up, which was a weird thing for him to say. I don't know why
He
he's
was just
mentioned that
kinda,
to us.
like, trying
Yeah,
to yeah.
yeah, and then but he just said I didn't really love her like that, which he did. He said it a bunch of times. He loved her like that. I think he just
Yeah.
it was just like I said, it was a game time to spur the moment, and it just happened to be the right decision.
Afterwards, his dad also said, "Go," because he went to her. This was to me
Yeah.
one of the more heartbreaking moments in the history of the show when he went to her and they talked and she was
Mm.
heartbroken and he said he didn't he when he said, "I don't wanna leave," I was like, "He doesn't wanna leave." He
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
loved like, that's come
yeah,
on,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
love. the dad was like, "Go to her. You don't want to appear indifferent." I was like, "This guy sucks. His dad sucks." That more than any
Yeah.
history like that. In that moment, I was like, "Oh, you're that. You're just a bad
If you look to the
person."
left, you made a theft. If you look down, you're gonna frown.
The worst. Just such a specific type of guy too. But,
Yeah.
and I don't think Clay is his dad. I don't think he's a bad
Right,
person. I
right, right.
don't think he was, I think he's, he was wounded, and I think he truly thought that they would just keep dating.
Yeah, yeah,
Which, by the way, the fact that he thought that, regardless of whether you think that should have been an option on the table, things are always weird with this show, and, like, it doesn't happen that often that they do just decide to keep dating. But to me, that shows that he really wasn't on the same level as like, he didn't understand what she wanted out of this. What
yeah,
like, the fact that he just thought that was a possibility, that he could say no and it'd be cool. It's like, "No, no, no,
yeah,
you actually, this woman wanted this commitment from you. You
yeah,
embarrassed her publicly, and it only hit him, I think, in the aftermath, in the
yeah, yeah,
moment." I agree with you. I don't think it was something, I think he was really, like, maybe down to that day, maybe do in the
yeah,
morning, but I do think he was kinda, like, back and forth on it.
mhm,
Um, but I think he really believed it would be fine, because this
yeah,
was a woman who had signified she was willing to overlook any other amount of indiscretions, and, kind of forgive him and help him grow and be his mom,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
And so naturally he thought, "Yeah, of course it'll be fine," and it wasn't fine. And I think you're right. I do think it was the best thing he could have done for her, because this
mm,
would have been a bad marriage. I
yeah.
mean, this is a man who was not ready to be an equal partner in a life.
I mean, even at that moment, that heartbreaking moment, he's still like draining from her. You know what I'm saying? Like she
Yeah,
has had this devastation and this heartbreak, and yeah, he does tell her like, "Is this a reflection? This isn't a reflection of you. This is more about me," which is I think is true. And he kind of, but he's like, "Can I get a hug? Can I? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to leave. Like, I need from you. Like, take care of me." In this moment when he broke her heart, like that was their relationship dynamic, and they would have this would have kept going on. Like he would have kept breaking her heart in other ways, and she would have had to like, and because she still
yeah,
does, she hugs him when he says he needs a hug. She comfort ends up comforting him through this. Like that was their relationship dynamic, and I don't want to, I don't want to leave like that. It's cruel to do. It's definitely cruel to do. Because even when he walks in, he's like, "Yo, what up?" And it's just like, "Ugh," and he's just kind of like,
boy.
"Yeah, yeah, what's up, homie? Like, I'm good." Like, hey, and then he just kind of leaves and kind of sulks off. I think that's when it hit him that like, oh, this is done.
The post game, so she seemed devastated in that
Mm.
moment. He seemed shell shocked
Yeah,
in the post game, post game, call it the post game. But when they interviewed him, like, by the fence afterwards, after
yeah,
it was after that interaction, he looked legitimately stunned by what happened. I think
yeah,
I'm just thinking about him, like, I think at that moment he was probably also, Clay doesn't strike me as someone who, like, in the mode of, like, I don't know, Jess is very calculated about public perception,
yeah,
but I'm sure in that moment it hit him that he was more likely to be a shake in the
yeah.
public imagination.
Right, right.
No, I mean, the guy said no, like, and also realizing that he had lost someone, because I think
Yeah,
he didn't think he would actually lose her. I felt really sad watching him, and then we get this scene, and this is the other big scene that I want to hear your thoughts about, between the mom and the dad. It's after Clay has said no. And I think it's after he's gone to talk to AD.
Mm,
They're by themselves, and they talk about the dad's infidelity,
mhm.
basically, that he wasn't a good husband. The mom says straight up to him, essentially, he should apologize to
Yeah,
her,
yeah.
and that it's probably because of him that Clay has a screwed up view of marriage.
Mhm.
David, watching them, it felt like the first time she had ever said that to him.
I'm gonna be honest. I was emotional watching this.
It was
I
intense,
I
intense.
This was whatever, because I would imagine the producers were like, "Hey, let's get them together. Let's have a conversation." Whoever made that decision, it's just genius. Like this is something that we don't ever see. We don't see in reality TV. We don't see in fictionalized TV. What we saw was a black woman, right, who got to face her ex-husband and air out all of the feelings that she had of 3+ decades of mistreatment and the way that she'd been hurt. And these two parents who just watched this moment of like, you know, all of the things that they have done, the decisions that they've made had led to this devastating moment for their child. And they had to watch it play out in real time and then like address it with each other. Namely, the mom addressing it with the father, especially because what she seemed to allude to was that she was learning through the course of this show that the dad was taking Clay on these trips. Like this is something that she learned in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So she is hurt anew by this whole thing and having to talk to this man and look him square in the face and say, you jacked up our child by doing this, fix it. And that is like a space that we do not see black women get to have. Rarely ever. People don't write it in the scripts. People don't show it in reality TV. We don't get this. This was a phenomenal moment that I could not believe that I was watching. Like I know people who have seen this personally, who've had, experienced this personally, who've had to like suck up this trauma and all this pain and do not get the space to express it. And we saw it, and I could not believe that I was watching it.
So you talk about feeling emotional. The AD Clay breakup, and then particularly the aftermath. Watching Clay, I felt like I've been punched in the
Yeah,
stomach.
yeah.
Watching her actually confront his dad, I found exhilarating.
Mhm. Mm.
Even though it wasn't like Laura being like, "Go kick up two
Right,
shows
right.
your rocks with
Yeah.
open-toed shoes."
Right.
This was like real
Yeah.
standing up for
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
which to your point, don't usually get to see.
And they're not trained in reality TV. Like, these are
Yes,
not
that
people
was
who,
this
like,
did not
know
feel
how to talk.
rehearsed.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah,
This was not rehearsed, this was not
yeah.
her trying to be famous. This woman didn't wanna be famous, she was dragged
Right,
into
yeah,
this, and
yeah,
frankly, probably in her mind, to your point about the humiliation, all this was being aired. She didn't
yeah,
sign up
yeah.
for any of this. To have
Right.
her own marriage exposed, her own betrayal and embarrassment put out in front of the world. So, I was so glad, not only that she stood up for herself to him, but
Mhm.
that we got to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um it wasn't a happy ending, but
Right.
it made me feel good that this man didn't get away with like that, not get away, but like, like the impression I got from the dad throughout the
Mm.
episode was like, oh, this is a guy that nobody's really like Clay didn't say it to him, right?
Right,
Let's
yeah.
go back to the point. Remember I talked about earlier? Clay was saying things in the interview
Right.
room that he was not saying to his dad. He was super deferent to his dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, I wish you could say to your dad some of the stuff you're saying in these interviews. So for the mom to say it, I thought was very validating to see.
And we have this moment of catharsis, of, like, mic drop moment. The dad is trying to be suave and he's like, just tell him to like marry somebody like you. And the mom clocks it immediately and she's like, you married me. You ain't treat me right yourself.
Yes.
I ain't talking about it no more. Go deal with it. And walks off. Like that is the moment of like
Yes.
moment of moments. And also I want to mention another moment that like I felt deep in my spirit, that is going to be felt deep in the spirits of a lot of folks who are watching this, where the mother says, talks about, hey, you need to do this, need to fix this. Clay's dad takes a deep breath. He gets choked up. He rubs his nose, and the camera catches her because she knows what's coming. She gives a deep eye roll from the bowels of her spirit because she knew that he was going to say, like,
Yeah.
my parents didn't give me the best example, and
Yes.
da da da. And that
Yes.
eye roll that she says before he says that lets you know. She said, "I know the is coming, and I am not going to fall for it this time." Like you could not have scripted this scene to be more impactful than the reality of what they had.
And I'll say this about Clay, because like I said, I do, like, look, he is not above criticism.
Mm,
And if I had a critique of him, it would be that he shouldn't have done this at the altar. He should have
yeah,
broken up with AD earlier and not made it a game time decision because of the
right,
shame that comes with
mm,
that. Like I thought that was his biggest failure in all of this.
right,
But what he did was not what his dad did. Like, you want to talk about repeating sins and
yeah, yeah,
breaking cycles, breaking the cycle of bad behavior or
mm,
familial trauma or whatever doesn't mean getting married. It
right,
means not being a liar. And he
yeah,
did do that. He
mm,
actually did break that cycle in a way.
yeah,
Like the way, like, so he will be dragged a bit and some of it is deserved.
mm,
But I feel that like his story which ended up being kind of like
The
story
story.
of the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah, is ultimately one of a guy who is not emulating his father, and I think that's important.
What we got was that conversation between his parents is a conversation that him and AD are not going to have. Like he
Yeah,
saved AD from that conversation 30 years down the line.
it's a
Like
great
that
point.
could have been their future. That was going to most likely would have been their future if he'd have gotten the woman and drained from her and done all this stuff and she's left, carrying this emotional baggage. What we saw was him, as you mentioned, cutting off that generational trauma, right? That cyclical thing and stopping them from being his parents. Right now, the onus now becomes on him to get better, so that the next person he meets and all that stuff, he figures out how to actually pour into her and not use podcast speak and not do all this other stuff. And it's on AD, as much as she was heartbroken, to like she's acknowledged that I'm a fix-a-hoe type of
Find
person.
an equal.
Yeah, find that equal person and not feel, like, why do these things keep happening to me? Like, she's asking those questions. You got the answer. You got the answer. Like, I want AD to get that equal person who can like pour into her, and that she sees this as the gift that it was. Like the gift of freedom from that. Like, I hope she sees it as that.
She's a catch, man. She's
Yeah.
probably the
Yeah.
biggest catch of the show. All right, well, that's a good
And
segue.
by the way,
Oh, sorry.
it took a lot of strength from that man to say no to the woman who looked like she did in that dress. So like that man must, like he really
Well, when she was walking up and he goes, "Body," I'm like, "Don't marry him. He's not ready to be
right.
married." If you're ladies, listen, it's okay to be appreciated by your man, but if you're literally walking the aisle and he goes, "Body," you probably shouldn't get married. All right. So we're not doing. Are they? We know who's gotten to the altar. The new
Squats and Jesus.
title of this segment, stacked,
Right.
is are they still together? We will find out. At the reunion is going to be a live reunion. Let's hope
Yeah.
that
We'll be there.
Netflix,
I don't know.
Netflix, get at us, fly us out.
All right.
Let's hope that they
I
don't
just have,
screw it up,
I just
or
have
that
my
the to-
no, so people are just gonna
okay.
get
So
no
just
no's or nods.
okay, no's or nods. That's fine. It's a lot of no's, so I think you're
Yeah.
actually going to be in pretty good shape here. Let's start with AD and Clay. Are they together? Oop, I did that
No.
wrong. Yeah, that's no.
No,
Yeah.
I don't even know. I can't. Okay,
You got
yeah,
it. There you
no.
go. No,
Okay, no.
that's on. You could do
Okay,
on. Is it
they're
on or
okay.
off? But it's a
They've
no.
probably they've probably been on top of each other a couple times. I
Yes,
think there was like a
100%.
little there was a little
Yes,
reconciliation type of thing, but
but
it's
yeah,
done.
definitely
Yeah.
not a thing. Okay, Amy and Johnny, obviously.
Yes, yes, very big yes. They're
If they're
together.
not, that would actually be pretty shocking.
I know, I would be shocked. I hope that I hope that in their wedding party somebody provided them with condoms. Like they are a Durex or Trojan commercial sponsorship just waiting to
Yes,
happen, where
get
somebody's
at
just
them.
like
Get at
like
them.
we just learned that safe sex exists. Thank you.
Chelsea and Jimmy is an interesting one.
Uh-huh.
I meant alluded to the fact that they've been kind of defending each other on the internet. Still a no for me.
Still no, absolutely not. No.
And then finally, Jeremy and Sarah Ann. It's
Yes,
on.
they're absolutely together. They are doing all kind of fun stuff together. They are
The TikToks don't lie.
yeah. They're
Okay.
riding jet skis, they're going to Carowinds, they're on horseback, they're doing all kind of adventure dating things together.
So power rankings are just people in this episode.
Mhm. Oh yes, absolutely. Yes. Who according the internet also said her name was Margarita. So there was that.
No, great names in this season. You got to go with Amy and Johnny, number
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Made it
And
work.
slash Amy's brother, who and their whole family, just their families are
Everything's
just
great.
yeah,
Great
yeah,
people. Love
yeah.
them. Don't be offended that you're boring. Being boring
Right.
is good. Number 3,
Okay. Yeah.
Jimmy.
Mm, yeah.
I mean,
Weird timing aside. Yeah.
the whole thing was odd, but
Yeah.
he dodged a bullet, I think.
Yeah.
And he came out of the show. We're gonna do a final power rankings later of like everybody, but
Mm,
he got a pretty good edit, all things considered.
yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah. And
Okay.
I think the way he handled Jess is gonna go a long way for him. Like go back
Yeah, I agree
a
too.
couple episodes, the way that he just wasn't like, she's so hot, I love like that is
Yeah,
going
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah. No, he
do so
handled it really
much.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And nothing's come out on him. He hasn't been milkshake judged.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
shout
There
out
was
to
a woman
Jimmy.
on TikTok who tried to pretend to be. I don't know if you saw that the
No,
woman who came
missed
out
that
and who
one.
was like she was like, I turned on Love Is Blind and my boyfriend is like on there
Oh,
refusing to like date somebody who has a kid, da da da. And he was like, I've never met this woman before in my life. She has
okay.
like 60 million views, but that was it.
Okay, 4 AD, short-term pain, long-term gain, baby.
Long term gain, and her family is incredible. 7 siblings. Ugh. When you watch back and she's like, I'm the first of 7 siblings to get married. This boy.
This might be controversial, but
Uh-oh.
I'm putting
Uh-oh.
Clay next. I'm putting Clay next.
Uh-oh.
I think people everything we said,
Yeah.
I think people will feel for him, they'll understand him, they'll drag him a little bit, but
I think
ultimately, I think it was all for the best.
that Clay is going to be one of the most debated figures in reality TV. I'd like the only like comparison, which is not even reality TV. I think Lawrence from Insecure is like where we're gonna have Clay in terms of like
Uh,
the way people go back and forth over how we talk about people. I feel like there's some drawings happening. I don't
okay,
know.
we got 6, Chelsea, then you've got
Okay.
a lake of fire and brimstone, LA traffic, and then at 1,000, we've got Clay's dad.
Yes. Oh man, if you think strong, you think long. If you're in the crowd, you make them say wow.
Oh, man, well,
Butterfly, that's old. Let me see the Tootsie Roll. He just had all kind of everything you needed from Clay's dad. He just had all the advice that you could ever need.
there's a
Oh man.
person he kinda reminds me of that's in our industry, but I'm not gonna name them here because I don't wanna start a beef,
Oh
but I
man,
think
do it.
think you know who I'm thinking of. I will text you. Carl, you can try to guess it. Okay, this is a horrible way to end the show. If you don't mind, Love
we
is
got
Blind.
we got cliffhangers too, baby.
Well, we'll be back. Actually, this isn't the end. I was gonna do a dramatic ending, but we are going to do a reunion because there is so much stuff that has to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
unpacked. This reunion, the Jeremy Sarah Ann affair. Is Trevor gonna show up? Is Jess now the most famous person in America? Are any of
Who
these?
has maybe dated a couple reality TV people since the end of that show?
Yes, been linked to a fellow pod person who didn't show up.
Mm.
So we will be back. I don't know the exact timing of our episode drop, but it'll be after the live reunion, and we will catch you guys next week.